Going to be episode 46. We're going to be talking about old school alignments in this video. So what we're going to do is we're going to break everything down, what you need to know. At the end, we're going to do our Q&A session. So make sure you guys hold on to your questions until the tail end, where I will do the question and answer portion of this video. Let's go ahead and get into our announcements. Guys, thank you for all the support. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and ring that notification bell so you guys get notified when I go live. We do this every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. So pretty easy to check me out at that time. And let's go ahead and start talking about today's topic. All right, we got our mod in here. Thank you very much. So yes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start looking at what we need to do for alignments and why sometimes taking it to a shop is not necessarily your best bet or interest. We're also going to talk about, at the tail end of this video, I got an update on last week's video. You guys are going to want to stick around for that update towards the tail end of this video. You're going to want to see what that update is and how much it could help you out if you have a newer engine. So before we get into today's topic, I really want to kind of break down what's going on before we get into the physical side of things. So in order for me to break this down properly, what we're going to look at is this is an 01 GMC Jimmy, meaning that the suspension is a little bit more old school than what it would be on a newer car. This vehicle does have upper and lower control arms. It has torsion springs or torsion arms is what they're called. And because it has the upper and lower control arms, it has more adjustability to it. Now, let's say we're talking about something like this one over here. That has struts. Struts require a little different deal on the alignment. The only place that they can adjust on a strut tower is on the bottom control arms. Sometimes they can pull them in, they can pull one in or one out, depending on what needs to happen. But it's very limited on what they can do with a strut tower alignment, meaning that as long as your strut towers are not bent, rusted, or broken, there's really nothing you can adjust on the top of your strut. It is what it is, and you can buy camber plates to do the camber adjustments. Honestly, I would not recommend that unless you're doing more of a performance setup. Again, guys, hold all questions till the tail end of this video. I will answer them then. And I also have an update on champagne bubbles. The video we did last week, I have a huge update on it that will help you guys for the future, especially with newer engines. Today, it's all about alignment. So what did we do that required us to do an alignment on this? Well, my upper control arms went bad. And you might ask, how do upper control arms go bad if they're solid pieces of steel? Because they use rubber cushion for the bushings. When those rubber cushions wear out or are not allowed to snap into place where they belong, you will wear out those bushings. Those bushings can be replaced if the arm is still good, but honestly, it's better to just put in the upper arm. Not only that, but I got a brand new ball joint when I went that way. The only problem is by doing that, I've moved my alignment keys out of the way in order to change out the arms. What you guys are going to see is an alignment kit that I bought from Quick Alignment or Quick Trick Alignment. They work really great. The Quick Trick Alignment set works awesome to be able to do your own, basically, alignments. The thing that you'll need to know, though, with this is what purpose are you doing with the vehicle? Because you can go from street application all the way up to race application. And this alignment tool will help you do that. But you need to know where you're putting the vehicle in at. What are you going to be doing with the vehicle? Are you doing circle tracks? So you need to add, different caster cambers. Do you need to do a little bit different toe in, toe out for drag racing? Those are the questions that you will need to ask yourself if you're going to use this particular tool. But this tool works great. Now, I bought mine with the plate and also the steering rod holder. I didn't use the steering rod holder in this one, and I'll show you guys that because I wanted to pay attention to what the steering wheel was doing while I was making my adjustments. It helped me to dial it in and keep everything straight when I did it. It's not always the easiest to do that. It's better sometimes to lock that steering wheel with the steering wheel lock. That way you can do your adjustment and get everything in spec that way, and you don't have to worry about where the steering position is. I did it that way because I was used to it and I was more comfortable with it, but that is a personal thing. So what did I get with my alignment tool? Well, I got some wheel adapters that allow me to go up to 22s or 24s, one of the two. I can't quite remember which one that is, but I think I can go to 22s. So I could do alignments on 22-inch rims. It came with the tape measures, and it came with their dial indicator gauge. Now, their gauge is really important when you're doing the alignments because you have to use the degrees. And I'll show you guys that in just a bit. But you dial it in based on degrees. Well, what are you looking at when you do your plates? You drive your vehicle up on your plates will turn. You can cheat this with 2 pieces of cardboard, but I don't necessarily recommend it because they can drag a little bit, causing your alignment to not be accurate. You need to use the plates that have ball bearings in it that are allowed to free spin as you turn the wheels. And it does make a huge difference. I've tried the cardboard method. It does not work. So you can get close with cardboard, but you have to take the vehicle off and on in order to use the cardboard method. It's better to buy the plates if you're buying this alignment set. Next, we're going to also talk about the string method. A lot of people talk about using string to do your alignment, measuring it up with the back end and all that other stuff. We're going to break that part of it down once we get to it, but just know the string method is only to check the thrust. And what I mean by thrust is if you don't have your front wheels tracking with your rear, let's say you have the front wheels are tracking off a little bit, and what it's going to do is create a weird thrust to one side. It's going to create a situation where the vehicle will push. If you have that, that means that your thrust angle was not set properly. The string only checks the thrust. If you want to check toe in, toe out, you have to do that with 2 tape measures, one from one side of the vehicle, one from the other. It's the only way to check toe in, toe out. You don't have any other options there. So, all right, checking a few chats. Hi guys, it's good to see you here on this Saturday. So, awesome. What we're going to do is I'm going to flip you guys around and we're going to take a look at this equipment. All right, so here is the wheel setup, guys. This is what I'm talking about with this Quick Trick alignment set. It comes with the 2 bars. It has a tab plate right here. That is to mount your sensor onto it. That allows you to get the angles. What you really need to pay attention to is down here. I put an erasable marker on my plate to mark 0. I do this when I start my alignment. The reason for that is you're going to have to make sure that you're keeping everything in spec. When you're doing the turning of the wheel, this is to set your caster. The caster has to be done first. So in order to do that, what you have to do is turn the adjustment bolts on your upper control arm. I'm going to squeeze you guys in here so you can see this control arm here. So here's my control arm right here. Here's the new A-arm. Here's the bolt that goes through. On this, there are adjustments on this side right here. So here's my adjuster. This little cam plate is my adjuster. I can adjust this by turning this in or out on the bolt. Now this is just the nut, so you don't worry about this. You only use that to tighten it up. But as you turn it, this cam will move and give you your adjustment. I'm going to cover the adjustments here in just a bit. But as you adjust that, you'll need to make sure that you keep everything square. And the reason for that mark is in order to do this, you turn 20 degrees, reset the gauge. You'll turn it 20 degrees in the opposite direction and take that reading. That reading will tell you where you need to be. All right, so on this vehicle, what are those readings? Well, let's break it down real simple. When you buy the tools from Quick Trick Alignment, you can buy their database. Their database tells you where this vehicle needs to be in spec when you're doing this. Now, where people go wrong is they'll either do the string method or they'll do the 2 tape measure method that you guys are seeing, but they don't set the caster. Caster has to get set first. If it doesn't get set first, your alignment will be off. You will chop tires, you will chew up tires, you will damage tires. We damaged a tire on this vehicle because our caster was off. Our toe in, toe out was right, our steering wheel was right, but because that caster was off, it was creating a weird push on that axle in a way that it wasn't designed to be pushed. So we had to reset that caster in order to make sure that the alignment works. When you set caster, you also need to pay attention to something called your camber. Camber is this. So if your camber is off, let's say you're tipped in, you're going to chew out the outs or the inside of your tires because the wheels are kicked in on the top. In order to make sure that you got that right, there is a level on their sensor that lets you level everything out. So as long as you're level and you haven't messed with the level too much, you won't chew up the tires on the camber side. But the caster has to be set first. Once you've set the caster, then you can pay attention to the camber. You'll do the camber next, which is your second step. The third is obviously to set the toe in, toe out. You want to get that toe in and toe out correct. Many people mess this up. And this is where I say laser shops do a horrible job, guys. Laser shops, if they don't calibrate their equipment daily, what can happen is they can start putting out bad alignments and cause your tires to get chopped. How do you prevent this? Double check it with the tape measures. Have one tape measure on the back, one on the front. You should not be more than 1/16 off, towed in. You need to be slightly towed in, but it can't be more than 2/16 tops, which is an eighth. You can't be more than an 1/8 inch in, towed in, because if you are, you're going to start chewing up your tires. You'll either chew up the outsides or the insides, or it'll cause some weird cupping issues. You don't want that. So make sure that they did their job right with the alignment. If you find out that it's a 1/4 inch off when you get done at the alignment shop, which I have, make sure you talk to the shop and tell them, hey, my toe in, toe out is a 1/4 inch off, guys. This isn't right. What can I do to fix this? If they say there's nothing they can do and that is perfectly normal, stop taking stuff to that shop, because that means that they don't care what happens to your tires. They're trying to sell you tires. And it's kind of a scam in the industry. Also, the whole thrust angle stuff that you guys see on the alignment sheets where they have the middle numbers in the middle of the vehicle, those don't mean very much. Basically, all that they're trying to tell you is that your rear axle is in line with your front. And if it isn't lined up and straight, it's going to throw the vehicle off to one side or the other. That's where I said you get that push. In order to fix that push, you have to make sure that you use the string method like we have here to do this. So now that we've talked about the caster and camber, how important they are, how to do the toe in and toe out, I'm going to break down literally step by step how I did this alignment, guys. So in order to do this alignment accurately, what you want to do is set your caster camber. Once you set your caster, you'll move into setting your camber, and you do that by moving your alignment keys all the way in or all the way out, but you have to do both of them at the same time. In order to do the caster portion of it, you'll have to set it to what the recommended specs are. What are the recommended specs for this particular vehicle? Well, it can't be off more than 0.1. So in order to get mine dialed in, the passenger side needed to be at 3.2. I'm at 3.1. The front had to be at 2.2 on the driver's side. So I'm at 2.2 on the driver's side. So I got mine perfectly set. And I double checked my camber by the hourglass. Let me grab one for you guys. I know you guys have seen these, but I'm just going to grab mine anyway. It doesn't hurt to pick up one of these. These are just a bubble level, and they work great to getting the brackets adjusted. Once the brackets are adjusted and they're on the vehicle, because when you put them on, they have to be perfectly straight. The bottom crossbar has to be sitting perfectly level, and the top sidebar has to be level. So I have to use 2 different bubble levels in order to get what I need. And this one works great for making sure that everything is plumb and square before I get started. Once I've plumbed it up, got it square, all I'll do is use this to double check as we go on in case I accidentally bump it. It happens, you do bump these, and when you bump them, they're off. Again, if a shop is working on it and they're using the laser ones and they bump the laser, it's going to throw the system off. You have to recalibrate it every time something bumps those sensors. And if they're not doing it, that's why you guys' alignments are looking bad and you're chewing up tires. So once I got all of that straightened out, I used the string and my tape measures with my brackets. And I will go ahead and flip you guys around here. So here is the string. How did I string this up? Well, pretty simple. All I did was put some blocks in the back. I made sure that my string went to the middle of my rim. At the middle of my rim, I ran that string all the way up to the front where I pinched it between some blocks again at the same height. Those blocks are all the same height. So I used 3 on the bottom, put the string on top, and put a block to hold the string tight. That's how I set the left side and the right side. So once I got those set, I was close. Then I just had to play around with my toe in, toe out. But I couldn't do any of this until after I had done my caster and camber. That was the first thing that had to be done. So again, if you guys are doing this and you buy this tool, remember, set your caster camber first, then move on to your toe in and toe out. That's where the string method comes into play because you want to make sure that you're straight with the rear axle. And how I did it was there is a very, very small gap on my front axle. Very small gap. If that string is pushed left or right too much, it will touch the string, meaning that now my alignment's off. I double check it with the tape measures to make sure that I'm accurate. This is an old school alignment. Old school alignments are nice, but again, you have to have all the knowledge in order to make it work. What's left for me to do on this alignment? Well, you might be asking that, and I'll break it down real simple where I'm at with this alignment and why this alignment will be done today. So where I'm at with it is all I have left is to tighten up my tie rod ends. And once I tighten those up, the alignment's done. I can test drive it, make sure that everything came out right. Before I take it out of the garage, I double check every nut and every bolt. If you're taking anything apart in suspensions, this is a good rule. All right, so if you guys got any questions, go ahead and chat them in here. We're going to probably start the Q&A in just a bit. I just want to finish up talking about what's going on when you're doing your double checks. So when you do a double check on a suspension, make sure that you put a wrench on every single bolt. Don't miss one. If you miss a bolt, there's a good chance it could come back to bite you later on. It's better to make sure that you put a wrench on every single one rather than sending it down the road and have bolts come out, especially on suspension. There's a lot of weight on the vehicle, and when suspension bolts come loose, they usually unload the suspension. Again, that part of it can get very dangerous very quickly. So again, double check your work. Make sure that everything's good. Also, sometimes you might have your rims and tires off. Make sure you retorque your rims and tires. Use a quality torque wrench. Make sure that everything is in torque spec. Here's a little trick for you guys that we will be doing on this one. Mark your alignment keys. Meaning once you've got everything set and you know right where it needs to be, take a paint marker or take something that is permanent paint. Mark where everything needs to be. And if the lines move, you know something's wrong. Now, the reason I'm going to do this on this one is we originally set this alignment, especially the caster on the passenger side, and I was way off. I was at 0.6 when we started this project. That's a huge difference. That will destroy a tire. And it's just those angles that can help kind of mess everything up to where those have to be set. The reason that the string method is being called out as not working is because it's only one piece of the alignment, and it isn't a very good one. The string method only keeps your rear and front aligned. It does nothing for toe in, toe out, and it does not do anything for the caster and camber. All it does is help you line up the rear axle to the front axle. That's it. The tape measure on the front of the tire and back of the tire, like you see online, that stuff does work, but here's the issue with that too. Let's say you have an issue with the caster, like we did. That caster will then throw off the entire alignment throughout the entire vehicle. You need to get that set before you worry about your toe in, toe out. Because if the caster's not set, you can have the toe in and toe out correct, but you're still going to chop up tires, and it's going to chop it at a weird side angle. The reason why is the vehicle is literally dragging that axle along. So as you're driving, even though your toe in and toe out is correct, it's back. So that tire is actually farther back on the vehicle than where it needs to be. What it's doing is it's kind of hopping down the road and chopping. That is why we're starting to see those weird chops in tires, why we're starting to see stuff messed up, even though people set their toe in and toe out correct. Again, it's frustrating. It really is, because you stick a lot of time and money into tires only to have them get all chopped up. Make sure you guys hit that like button and the subscribe buttons. Ring the notification bell. We do this every Saturday at 1 p.m. with a new topic. So what I want to do now is I want to jump into an update on champagne bubbles. That's right. We have an update on this. So last week, you guys saw me do the valve cover bypass. What was the valve cover bypass? The reason I'm talking about this is I'm 20 minutes into the video, so we're good to go. So the valve cover bypass eliminates the potential of having oil getting dumped into your engine from your breather systems. And when we did this, we were using up to almost a quart a week of oil. I can now say safely, after we've driven it for a week, it hasn't used a drop of oil, not one single drop. The level has maintained perfect level from where I left it. That tells you the newer engines are not very good. So the newer engines have an issue with oil consumption. And why is that? Well, oil consumption is created through a situation in newer engines called high vacuum pressure. High vacuum pressure is created by higher compression engines. A lot of your newer engines are higher compression, meaning that because the compression is bumped up, your vacuum pressure also increases. That increased vacuum pressure is what's pulling oil out of the top of the valve cover through the breather systems. That's why newer engines are consuming oil at a very high rate. All right, so I just saw a question pop up here. Which car? So this one is a Kia Soul EX with the 2.0 engine. Again, this would be pretty similar to most Kia engines, Hyundai engines, stuff like that. I have done this same thing on a Malibu LT, which is a GM product. And again, there I was consuming oil, and the oil consumption was happening at about a half a quart every 2 weeks. I was able to get rid of the oil consumption off of that car, and because of that, I looked into this and I decided it's time to do it on here. And after we did it, we're not using any oil at all. Jeremy, I recently aligned my car in this way, but realize there has to be a way to know if the car or if the rear tires are aligned to the frame. There is a way to do that, but you need the frame measurements. So this is from the dealer. You can get dealer spec, especially if it's a solid rear axle. If you're dealing with a car that has an independent rear suspension, it gets a little bit more tricky. That is a little bit more difficult to use this setup. Now they do make another setup that you can use from Quick Trick Alignment, and it comes with 4 brackets for the rims and tires that allows you to put a set on the rear. This will allow you to do toe in, toe out on the rear. Will allow you to do the caster camber in the rear. So that might be, if you're going to go that route, buying the kit might be the best bet. And again, guys, I'm not sponsored by these guys. I bought this just trying it to see if it would work. If it didn't, I knew I was out the money. But I needed a way to do my own alignments, especially after the shops had kind of messed up enough stuff. I was like, okay, you guys are chopping my tires and I'm getting a little sick of it. Which oil? 5W40? No, 540 is way too thick. This one here, you're looking at 5W30. On this one over here, you're looking at 520. And you can go to a 530 on the Kia. I don't want to because it's too thick of an oil. And when you live in colder climates, that crazy cold air does weird things to the oil. It causes it to almost get sludgy or jelly. And trying to pull that up through the top is what causes big problems. You do not want to do that. Looking through the chats, guys. Looks like everything's good. Yeah, if you guys got questions, chat them in now. Now's the time. Today's topic is on alignments. So if you guys got any questions on alignments, make sure you let me know. So all that's left on here is we're going to be tightening up the tie rod ends. I've gone through and I've double checked all the bolts. Checked my toe in, toe out. I'm going to do it again after I tighten up my tie rod ends. What I'll probably use is an impact and a wrench to hold. And then that way I just want to squeeze it in so it doesn't move. Once I've got all of that, I'm going to go ahead and mark everything before I start tightening stuff up, because if I tighten it up and then it moves, then I'm going to have to take it back apart. So I'm better off mark it now that everything's perfect. And then I'm going to move on to doing the other setup. So how would I mark it? You could use a paint marker, but paint markers tend to wear off. Black Magic markers are also not a good way to go because it won't stay. What I suggest is grabbing a very high vis color. Okay, so this would be a white diamond. This would be a good one right here. Also, okay, otherwise a red. The reason I'm saying these, because these are permanent paint markers. When you put your marks on it, unless something rubs against it, you won't rub this off. I mean, it would have to be pretty aggressive on there. And what this will do is lock it in to where you know exactly where your alignment is. So if it moves, hey, I need new alignment keys, or I need new alignment adjusters. So this color is extremely white. This will be perfect on a black frame. We will see this always. And it won't be very difficult to see if my alignment moves with this. The worst part about it is when people don't tighten things down perfectly. Let's say they leave their upper control arms loose. What happens is when they're loose, they'll tend to flop to the most relaxed position, meaning that it's going to throw it out of alignment. Oftentimes, in order to stay in alignment, there has to be pressure on it. And you're going to have to set it and then tighten it down really tight. I put a big wrench on it and I cranked it down. So if it moves, then I know my alignment keys are shot and I got to buy new ones. J-Bone, hello from New York, Long Island. What are we doing today? Today is on old school alignments, and I'm covering why certain aspects don't work. So people talk about the string method. You guys see me using the string method here. Again, I explained that the string method only works to align your rear axle with your front axle. That's all it does. I also talked to you guys about the toe in, toe out using 2 tape measures. This setup is from Quick Trick Alignment, and I bought the plates. The plates work great for getting everything in spec. You can use 2 pieces of cardboard, like I said, but again, you have to take the vehicle off the cardboard, bring it back onto the cardboard. You have to constantly move it around. The plates allow you to adjust without having to move the vehicle around. That's why alignment shops to this day still use those plates. But yeah, getting back to this. After you spend all your time setting your alignment, it does not hurt to mark where things are. As you mark them, you'll realize, hey, I need to do this kind of adjustment, or I need to do that kind of adjustment, or hey, I'm off in this area. Why am I off? Oftentimes when you got it set where you want it and you mark it and it does move, you'll figure out why real quick. You'll figure out, is it a bolt that's not holding tight? Or is it that there's a bushing that's wore out? Or has nothing really changed and did something else break? This helps you narrow down your problems. If you don't do this step, what happens is you just totally mess up. I appreciate you showing me or showing us this method. Yeah, like I said, the biggest thing is to start with your caster. Get your caster set first. If you don't set caster, toe in, toe out doesn't mean a thing. Camber doesn't mean a thing. Caster has to be first. Once the caster's first, you'll move on to camber, making sure that everything's sitting straight up and down. Then you move into the toe in, toe out. Most of what you're seeing on the exterior here is for toe in, toe out, except for the caster, which is, in order to do caster, you need this bracket and you need that plate. You can't set it without those. And the reason you need those is because that's the only way to get it. It has to be done by degrees, not by inches. You cannot set caster when you're trying to do it by inches. It will not work. There's a tool, electronic dial indicator tool, that they send you with Quick Trick. Does this work on old school cars? Yes, it does. Actually, it works better on old school cars versus the new laser setups. And the reason why that it works, because that was the way that they were designed back in the day. Laser alignments did not come into play until much, much later. They were not always on the scene. So when I was a kid and my first vehicle, they didn't have laser alignments. We did everything by string. And if you knew what you were doing, you could do it in your own driveway. And you'd get the same job as if you went to a shop to get your alignment done. It wasn't until much later in my driving career that I saw that they started coming out with the lasers. Lasers really didn't come into play until, I want to say, either late 90s or early 2000s. And I didn't trust them right off the bat because they weren't accurate. And to this day, they're still not at 100% accurate. The reason that they're not is because the more you bang them around, the more you throw the whole software system off. And you have to recalibrate if you bump them. Most shops don't recalibrate the system if they accidentally bump them trying to set a camber or a caster. They won't reprogram the whole system because it takes time. Time is money. They're trying to cut the corners, so that's what they're going to do. then you wonder why your vehicle's a 1/4 inch in. It's a 1/4 inch in because you also have a caster issue because they didn't reset up their system. Or why is my steering wheel off after I get my new alignment done? That's why. But J-Bone, to answer your question, again, this setup is from Quick Trick Alignment. I bought it myself. They're not sponsoring this video at all. No sponsorship here. I bought it. And the reason I bought it was I wanted a way to double check everything to make sure that the shops were doing it right. Because the worst feeling in the world is spending $1,000 on tires, figuring out that you have an alignment issue, and now you wasted that $1,000 because you have chopped up tires. So that's why I bought this. And I didn't buy the full 4-piece kit because oftentimes all I'm using the rear set for is to make sure that I'm in line with the front. So that's why I didn't buy the 4-piece alignment kit. It was quite a bit more money, so I chose not to do it. But there is a cheaper kit that you guys can get that has the 2 front setups with tape measures and the dial indicator that you need for the caster. And that one's not too horribly expensive. And it'll work on pretty much anything. It's all based on rim size. So they usually say from like 14s all the way up to 22s. I think I can either do 22 or 24 inch rims. I can't quite remember on that. I would have to pull out my paperwork to make sure. But hopefully that answers all your questions, J-Bone. But yeah, that's the biggest thing, is alignments. It's so important to do it in the right order. And that's what they're not telling you guys online. When they show you guys the string method, they're not telling you about that. They're not telling you that the caster has to be set first. If the caster isn't set, everything else doesn't matter. J-Bone, my 98 Laredo steering wheel is way off after an alignment. So now how do I make it right? Hard to find anyone to do the job right anymore. Yeah, see, that's the problem with alignments, guys. This is why I got so frustrated with the alignment shops. Is, again, if they don't set the caster right to begin with, everything else is going to be off. So you need to set that caster. Once you got the caster set, you can move into camber. Camber is very easy. There's a little bubble on it. Just make sure that it's lined up in the bubble and you're good to go. That's on the tool that they give you. So once you've got those 2 in, then you get your toe in and toe out. Where you adjust your steering wheel is in that toe in, toe out. So if you've got your tape measures set up across your front and you know your caster camber are good and you're set up for your toe in and toe out, how you adjust your steering wheel is to move one side in, one side out. And what you're doing is this motion will move the steering wheel, but it'll also keep your tires in line to that 1/16 of an inch that you need to maintain to not wreck your toe in and toe out. That's how you can adjust that, is just by doing those simple twists to get your steering wheel lined back up. Because what it's doing is, as long as you move one in, one out, you're not moving the toe in and toe out, you're moving the crossbar. That crossbar can move based on which way you turn that. So if you're just turning them so that they're adjusting that crossbar and not adjusting the tires, then you're moving the bar. Let me know if that makes sense to you. And you'll have to play around to figure out which side you need to go in with and which side you need to go out. It's different for every system. Now, again, it sounds like you're dealing with a Dodge product. That will have probably it might be a rack and pin. No, not that old, not that old. If it would be 07, I would have definitely said you will have a rack and pinion setup. So the rack and pinion, you'd have to go in one side, out the other side. So it would be basically shifting the inner part of that rack and pinion is all you're doing, is you're adjusting the rack and pinion to pull one way to readjust the wheel. And there's not a good way to lock it on your tires when you do this process. So you need the tape measures. You need to take constant measurements on left and right to make sure that you maintain that 1/16. If you don't maintain that, what happens is you start throwing your toe in and toe out so far off that you're going to fight to find it. So it's better that if you're going to do it, loosen everything up so you can adjust it by hand, and then just do quarter turns one at a time. And when you do those quarter turns, mark your tie rod ends. And when you mark them, you'll put like 4 marks in your tie rod ends. That way you know you're only turning it to 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark. If you do it that way, you'll be able to keep your alignment in spec. You'll have to do some minor tweaking once you get the steering wheel straightened out pretty close to where you want it. That's how you would get that. And the reason I left mine unlocked was for this very same reason. Guys, I bought the steering wheel lock. I didn't use it. And I want to show you guys that I didn't use it. I didn't use my steering wheel lock. And my wheel is perfectly straight right now. And the reason that it's perfectly straight is because as I did my adjustments, I watched what that steering wheel was doing. If it was doing something I didn't like let's say it was starting to go a half a turn off. When I got done doing my caster on this, the steering wheel was a half turn off. So that meant in order to get my steering wheel back into spec, when I was playing with my toe in and toe out, that's when I did my adjustment. So how I did it was I got the steering wheel right where I wanted it. Then I started playing with my toe in and toe out. And then once I had my toe in and toe out set, if I was a little off, then I went out on one side, in on one side, and I was able to pull it right back in where it needed to be. And that's honestly the best way to set a steering wheel and to set your toe in and toe out. They got to be done at the same time. But yeah, we're going to mark these in just a bit. I'm going to shake this up. We're going to go ahead and mark these. If you guys got any more questions here, go ahead and chat them in. Today's been kind of slower. It's just kind of the way it is. So I'll show you guys a few more tricks and a few more things as we go here. Make sure you guys get those questions in though. Okay. All right. So while doing this, you're going to want to have really good light. So I got a nice bright light here. I don't want to shine in your face, but you guys can see it right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to shine in, find the best place to mark these. If it's dirty, we're going to wipe it and try to clean it up the best we can. But then we're going to put our paint on it. And when we put our paint, we want that paint to dry before we drive the vehicle around. Meaning that after I'm done with this process, more than likely today, I may not drive this vehicle very much, but I will try to move this thing around because I want to make sure nothing's going to move on me. Tony Kart Racer, eyeball alignment. Sure that's the way to go. No, this is not an eyeball alignment, guys. The reason that you guys are seeing this is because I had the measurements from Quick Trick Alignment. You are not doing an eyeball alignment here because you're using the factory alignment marks. You're also using the factory specifications because they have the database. I had to pay to get that database so that I could do the alignments on many different vehicles. I can do up to about 2019 right now. And that would allow me to pretty much align any of those vehicles. Without the measurements, you cannot do this. You have to have the measurements. You have to set the caster first. Everything else doesn't matter until caster is set. And that's That's what a lot of the stuff online is not showing you. Tony, kart racer? No. What do you mean by that? Guess I'm a little confused. Those weren't accurate, especially from wear and tear throughout the years. So where I would say that things are not accurate is when you go to an alignment shop and they're not calibrating their laser systems on their alignment shops. I've had too many times that I've brought vehicles back into my own garage and I'm a 1/4 inch towed in. That's too far. It'll chew up tires. Suspensions get loose, bushings get worn. Yeah, that happens on every vehicle. It doesn't matter what it is. And even if you're using a laser alignment, you can't do an accurate job if your bushings are shot. So obviously that should be your first inspection. Make sure all your components are good before you start. But whether you're using this old school method or whether you're using the laser setup, it's going to yield the same result if you're using the same measurements. The only thing that's going to change is the accuracy of what you're doing. So in a newer laser system, if they bump them trying to set the caster, which you have to set first, if they bump it, then you have to recalibrate the system. Aim high. Are there newer years available to you somehow so that you can align newer than 2019 as well? As long as the vehicle frame didn't change, I can still go past 2019. If I wanted to upgrade to the newer database, I can. Again, that is a little additional cost if you choose to do that. But for the most part, all of their databases go all the way back to like the early 60s. So you can align everything from early 1960 all the way up to, 2019, which covers a huge span of vehicles that they have a massive database on. Those measurements came from the factories. So that's what the factories are using when they send them out off the line brand new. So you're putting it back to the way it was brand new. Now, let's say you do an upgraded suspension setup. Let's say you go full custom, you do a whole bunch of custom stuff. There's a good chance that their database measurements might not work. Then you're going to have to go with a full measured out suspension setup on a rack. When you go with that kind of setup, you're going to need to know where they need to be and then really make sure you mark everything, because once you mark it, you're going to want to make sure you can put it back there later on. And you're not going to want to use a sloppy paint marker like this. This will tell us if we're way off, but it won't tell us if we just slightly make a small modification. This will tell me if something's moved, but it won't tell me how much it moved unless it's a lot. If it's a little movement, I may not see it with this. But you can use this sharper tip right here. This will give you a much closer marking. But I choose not to cut mine open because once I cut this open, this paint isn't going to be good anymore. So I can also use a very small, fine brush to mark them. For me, I just want to make sure that stuff isn't moving. And if it moves, it's going to move a lot for me. It's either going to move or it's not going to move. So for me, I'm not too worried about getting really down to the nitty gritty. But if you are and you're doing a aftermarket suspension, make sure you mark it all very well when you're done, because not marking it is going to set you back and it could chew up tires in the process. Every time we chew up a tire, we got to look at it as throwing away money. And this vehicle already has one really bad chop tire. I put it on the back, and the reason we do this is sometimes you can take tires that are still got plenty of life left that might be a little chewed up, and you can put them on the rear. And because the vehicle is using that tire to turn, it will kind of burn that tire back flat again. Again, if it starts vibrating or doing a bunch of weird stuff, I'll just get a new tire. But for the most part, I want to try to see if I can pull it back around. But let's go ahead and get in there. Let's set our marks. I want to make sure I get this in and that everything is where I need it to be. because once this leaves the garage, I do not want to be doing this again. So where I need to mark is going to be right here, and I'm going to mark it off of, you guys are having a hard time seeing that because I'm not able to get in there and get a good shot. So where I need to mark is in here, and it has to be done in here to where I got a good clean shot that'll allow me to see where everything is. Just realized I tipped my pen when I did that, and hopefully I didn't spill a bunch inside my wheel well. But let's see if we can get in here and take a look at this after I've marked now. Tony Cart. How much adjustability do you get from the factory? I have a slammed Acura Integra with no aftermarket camber kits. With that said, everything does look squared. Okay, let's go ahead and cover some of the aftermarket stuff, guys. All right, so you're dealing with a full aftermarket suspension at this point. You've got enough stuff done to it that it could throw the alignment quite a bit off. And as far as how much adjustability do you have on the factory stuff, the best question is you need to know what the factory setting for the caster is. If that caster's not in spec, you're going to chew up tires. If you're looking for the slammed look, but you're not caring what it does to the tires, then you're going for a style look. You see these weird cars that are going down the road with their tires sticking like this. The rims are barely clearing their front fenders. And they don't care that they go through a set of tires in 1,000 miles. They're doing it as a style thing. If you're trying to keep tires on a slammed vehicle, you still need to get it into that caster spec, meaning that the caster has to be set to where it was from factory because that's the way the car was built. It was built with that caster built into the suspension. So you have to get the caster set. Once that's set, then you're going to be playing around with the camber, and that's where you're going to have the most issue, especially on a slammed car, because what happens is the car comes down, suspension gets tucked up under. In that process, what happens is it does one of these. So rather than being like this, it goes like this to get the squat. When that happens, you're going to chew up your tires, usually on the inside of your tires, because it's tipping the tires in. In order to pull that back in, you will need to pull those bottoms in. So you'll need to pull your bottom, if you have bottom A-arms, you need to adjust your bottom A-arms in. That's the only way you're going to get that caster number restored to factory. Hopefully you'll be able to do it, but sometimes there isn't enough room on the adjusters to be able to pull them in, especially on an extreme drop. If it's slammed, you're going to run into issues. Won't that put a lot of stress on the axle joint, CV joint? It can, but this is the trade-off that we do. If we try to slam it because we want the look, sometimes we have to pull it in. Now, if you're using factory alignment stuff and you're not getting crazy and trying to do a bunch of extra camber kits or anything like that, or doing anything that you have to cut part of the framing in order to have more adjustability, honestly, the way that they make them in the factory, you can pull those keys all the way in if you need to. The issue is you don't have an extreme amount of adjustment, meaning you might have a little bit to play with, but you're not going to have a crazy amount to be able to set everything in if it's a huge drop. Let's say the car normally sat 2 inches higher than it does now. That's an extreme drop. That extreme drop is going to require an extreme amount of adjustment. In order to get that adjustment, you might have to consider a camber plate, meaning that in order to get your whole suspension put back into shape, you might have to put a camber plate on the strut tower that allows you to pull that strut out. If you can pull the struts out, you'll get your alignment back to where it needs to be. So yeah, that's why it's important for us to get that stuff set. Because when that's not set, it doesn't really matter. Caster has to be first. The string method, doing the tape measures across the tires, all that does is set thrust and toe. That's it. You use a ton of tools to do that. But without setting that caster first, everything else is a wash. Nothing else is going to be in line. One tire is going to drag farther back, meaning that it's going to chop the tire because it's trying to limp down the road rather than being straight with the other one. Also, it'll create a weird push feeling. Like when you drive the vehicle, it'll feel like the vehicle's pushing one way or the other. The reason it's pushing like that is pretty simple. Your alignment's off. And you can't necessarily blame the tires because the tires are only responding to the way the alignment is. It responds to whatever issue is currently there. The tires are just the visual representation of that failure. It just shows the physical failure of something in the suspension. All right, so I got one more here that I want to mark up. This one's going to be a little harder to see, guys, so I'm just going to set you over here. Yeah. I just can't get a good look at this one. Yeah. I think I got a mark on it. I'll have to go with that. So what might have to happen here, guys, is I might have to actually pull my tires back off, and I'm not going to do that until after I'm done. But we are going to go ahead and mark the tie rod ends. Tie rod ends are where things kind of go crazy. When those aren't set, your steering wheel's off, you chew up your tires. So toe in, toe out is important. But usually the tie rod ends don't move much once they're locked down. Once you tighten up those bolts, they don't move. The reason I'm marking them is in order for me to tighten mine up, I got a lot of bolt to move in on in order to start pinching the tie rod end. And the last thing I want that thing to do right now is to move. If it moves while I'm tightening it, I'm going to have to take it back apart again. So I'm going to mark it, and as I'm tightening it, if it moves, I will back it off, set it back, and redo it. But let's go ahead and crawl underneath, and we're going to set our marks. And this is how you guys can do it too at home. If I can't get you guys down here far enough, then I'll get my other tripod set up for you guys. Yeah, you guys aren't going to be able to see anything like that. All right. So, I'll have you guys hold on while I switch you around here. Okay. Again, if you guys got any more questions, chat them in. As of right now, what I'm doing here is I'm just going through and I'm marking the tie rod ends with a paint stick. And the reason I'm using paint is I don't want these marks to erase. All right, that one got a little sloppy, but that's marking your tie rod ends. Again, I'm only doing this so that as I tighten those bolts, they don't move on me. I don't want these tie rod ends moving around, so I'm marking where these are. There we go. All right, hey guys, let me know if you want me to show you the deal that we did on champagne bubbles with the valve cover bypass. If you guys want me to refresh that, actually let me do a poll for about 2 minutes and we'll see what you guys say. Okay, just plop the poll out there for you guys. Make sure you guys get your votes in. Let me know if you guys want to see how we did that. So this video, we're going to wrap up with what we did for the alignment. In order to do the alignment, we did our caster first, like I said, then set our camber, then went into our toe in, toe out. In that process, we adjusted a few things. We adjusted our steering wheel. We adjusted where everything was set from factory. We put it back into place where it needs to be. I just showed you guys that I marked my suspension. I'm going to mark the other side when the video is done, and I'm going to tighten everything up. Once I tighten everything up, it's done. then I can go ahead and break the blocks down, put all that stuff away, take my alignment tools off, get that all turned around. Now, get you guys' votes in here. We're at a 50-50 that you guys want to see what I did with the valve cover bypass. The valve cover bypass is the reason that newer engines are having issues, guys. This is why this bypass is so necessary, because the newer engines are pulling oil. They just are. So I'll give it a little bit more time here to wrap up, and then we'll go ahead and end that poll. Get your votes in. Also, guys, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. We do this every Saturday at 1 p.m. with a new topic every week. I've already got next week's topic already set up. Tell you what, if we get to 6 votes, I'll tell you guys next week's topic. So get me to 6 votes and I'll tell you guys next week's topic. Okay, we got about a minute to go here. We're at 4. 2 more to go, guys. Come on. Plug it in there. Then I can let you guys know next week's topic too. All right, we're definitely, we're sitting at 75% for yes to see it. We're close, guys. Come on, 2 more votes and you guys will get next week's topic also. I'm going to grab something to drink, and I'm going to check it, and then we're going to end the poll. Got 5 votes. Tell you what, come on, one more vote. Come on, we can do this. 1 more. I'll go pop open the hood. You guys are definitely wanting to see the valve cover bypass. All right, we got our 6 votes. Awesome, guys. Next week's topic is going to be on alternators. There's another story with Crimson Vortex sitting over here that I have to tell you guys what happened with this while this vehicle is in storage. It's not that something happened to it. It's just what happens when parts sit. And sometimes things go bad. Alternator was one of them. And I'm going to show you guys how I figured it out. And I'll actually go ahead and pull my alternator back out of this one to put it back in to show you guys how to do alternators. Alternators are one of the most important things to a charging system on a car. So when it doesn't work right, it can destroy batteries, it can cause a whole bunch of electrical issues, it can cause other things to not work in the car properly. So if you got something weird going on with your vehicle and you're not getting proper voltage, I would start your alternator. Let's go ahead and look at this valve cover bypass. Since it is 86-14, you guys wanted to see what we did here. All right, here we go. Valve cover, or I should say engine cover, not the valve cover. Engine cover is off, so you guys can see what's going on here. So let's break this down a little bit for you. Here is your valve cover right here. This is the valve cover. And on this vehicle, there are 2 breathers, one here, one back here. The one on the back side goes to your intake tube. The one on the front side goes right directly into your intake. This is where we're pulling the oil from the valve covers on newer 4-cylinder engines. It's pulling the oil right out of here and dumping it right into the back side of the throttle body into the intake. What this is doing is it's gumming up our intakes, it's messing up sensors, and it's plugging injectors and causing valves to get sticky with oil residue. In order to alleviate that, we capped this line coming off of the intake side. We put a bolt here, and we capped off the front side of the intake before the throttle body, right here. So this is capped off. You won't pull any air into here, and you won't pull any air into here. So now that you're saying, okay, well, now that the engine's sealed, how are we venting that valve cover? Because if we don't vent it, we're going to have bigger problems later on. You will. If you plug these off, you can actually damage the engine. So these have to breathe. One way or another, they have to allow air pressure to come out. Again, that air pressure is increased because of higher compression. In order to eliminate that higher compression and the higher vacuum, what we do is we install a hose with elbows into a breather. So this is just a little air breather is all this is. All it does is allow the turbulent air from inside the valve cover to escape through the filter. Because it's filtered, it won't allow dirt to go back into the engine. That's why the filters are important. This vehicle has to have 2 filters. It has to have one for the back, one for the front. Once we did this, it eliminated all oil consumption. All oil consumption is completely gone. This thing was using almost a quart a week. This vehicle now, with those bypasses installed, has been driven for a week, and we have used 0 oil. That tells us exactly what we have going on with the newer engines. This also tells us the problems of the newer engines. Because newer engines are pulling this oil, it means that they don't care what happens to the engine. And over time, this is going to destroy more than just engines. Because this is kind of a recap of that, and we're doing the suspension stuff, let me go ahead and recap this for you guys. What happens when we pull a whole bunch of oil in the top of an engine and it gets burned inside the cylinders? Where does that residue go? Downstream into the catalytic converters, meaning that we're going to plug up the catalytic converters. Plugging catalytic converters gets very expensive to fix when most catalytic converters, unless you buy them off of a cheap source, and there are a few out there, but at the same time, if your state makes you pass emissions testing, those cheap catalytic converters will fail, meaning that you will not be able to pass emissions with cheap catalytic converters because they are not built to spec. What happens is that oil residue gets built up into those catalytic converters. There's no good way to burn it out, and it destroys your catalytic converters. That is the more expensive route that it can go. The other issue is that it can create a whole bunch of carbon within the engine. That carbon can plug up valves, cause valves to not seat properly. It can also cause them to get caught. And if they get caught for any reason and the piston comes up, it's going to smash that valve. Next, it can also burn or scorch the top of a piston because now there's oil on top of fuel, meaning that it's going to be a hotter, longer burn because it's burning the oil as well. That's what's happening in these newer engines, and they're not telling you. Again, I did this because I knew that there was something wrong. And when I knew something was wrong, I knew we had to figure out a way to fix it. So the way to fix this on any newer 4-cylinder engine is to do the valve cover bypass. Bypass it to a filter system. What you can do is, even if the vehicle has a warranty, you can do the bypass. Just don't cut any of the factory hoses. Use caps only. Replace the hoses when it's time for you to take it back in. This does not throw a check engine light. This does not mess with emission systems. This does not do any damage to the engine. What it's actually doing is saving the engine and prolonging the life of the catalytic converters, meaning that the catalytic converters will do their job, which is to burn off the catalyst from fuel being burned, not oil being burned. That oil burn residue will destroy the cats. It'll plug it up. When you see catalytic converters and they're black and they're all sooted up, it's from the oil, not from the fuel. So You talking about oil catch cans? That's another way to go. You can go with an oil catch can, but not every vehicle comes with the option of putting in an oil catch can. I looked for one for this car, for this Kia Soul. I would have had to make my own out of air fitting plumbing parts. And I've done this before. I've used like air compressor parts to build my own oil catch can. You can do it that way. I chose not to because I didn't want something I would have to drain. Plus, I don't drive this vehicle every day. And because I don't drive it every day, it would be a lot harder to drain that oil catch can at every fuel fill up, which is when you need to drain it. If you don't drain it at every fill up, or sometimes you'll get by with an oil change. You can get by on an oil change sometimes, but most of the time when you fill up with fuel, you need to drain that oil catch can, because all the catch can will do is catch until it's full. Once it's full, it'll dump right back into the system again. Your whole point of that is to catch whatever's coming out of there or catch the oil residue. And unfortunately, with this one pulling as much oil as it was, oil catch can wouldn't have done any good. It would have been full after the first drive or two. And some of that is because of the way the valve cover systems are set up. They want you to replace the valve covers in order to eliminate the oil consumption. The problem is that all the ones you're going to replace it with are not going to necessarily solve the issue either. So it's putting a Band-Aid on a situation where this is a permanent fix. Putting the breathers on it, permanent fix, no maintenance, nothing to worry about. Oil catch can, you can do it, but you're going to have to drain the oil catch can. That's the trade-off. If you don't mind draining the catch can, then don't put the filter systems on it. If you rather not have the maintenance, put the filter systems on it. Now, the only thing I will say is my Malibu did not have a smell to it. After we did it on this Kia Soul, there is a very faint smell of crankcase. So this is just fumes coming out. It's very small, very not noticeable unless you know what you're smelling and know what you're looking for. That smell is a little distracting, but it's not horribly bad. I would take the trade-off of not consuming oil versus the small smell that there is. And when I mean small, it is very, very, very faint. You have to know what you're smelling. You have to know that scent in order to even smell it to begin with. I can tell you the person that drove this car never really said much about the smell. So that tells you how minor it was. And that person knows nothing about cars other than the person who works on them. That's about it. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But that is the issue when you do some of the filter systems, is it will let the crankcase smell come up. Because it'll get in there, sometimes it'll be noticeable. It's not toxic. It does not hurt you. It's just one of those things where you catch a faint smell. That's all it is. It doesn't create headaches, doesn't bother people in any way. But the trade-off is you won't be consuming oil. There's your trade-off. All right, any more questions, guys? Let's get them in. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the news portion for this week. So we have some news on the Dodge, Ram, Jeep, and Stellantis front. It is apparent that Stellantis has made some big mistakes, huge mistakes. Because of this, they fired their CEO, Camden. He's done. Because he's done, they brought back the old guy that retired that was part of Dodge. And he was actually responsible for building the TRX, meaning there's a good chance that they're going to turn this company back around the other direction as far as performance. Their sales have tanked. Their EV push has been a complete failure to this point. The company is on the brink of losing way too much money. It's really coming down to the fact that if they don't make a dramatic move, if they don't shake things up and shift and change, the company will not survive. The other thing is we got some news on the Nissan front. Nissan is still looking for an investor to save the company. They've got about 8 months left before they are going to have to close the doors. This means that cars like the GTR are going to be gone. It's one of those things where they anticipated the market doing something and it didn't. They invested heavy into research and development and then didn't get the sales to back up that research and development. Now, some of that was their pricing. Some of their vehicle price is a little ridiculous. Yes, they make very, 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 very fast import cars, but at the same time, you're running the risk of you built this high-end car that you're selling for a lot of money. If you don't sell enough units, it isn't worth it. We're going to start seeing that same thing with the Corvette. They're building a lot of these higher end models, and if they don't sell enough units, eventually they're gonna shelf either some of the lines of the Corvette, or they're going to revert it back down to a lower grade. And once they do that, then the Corvette's going to be useless like it was in the early 80s. An 82 Corvette still sells super cheap because nobody wants them. They got crazy cheap rubber bumpers that nobody likes. The styling wasn't there. It was the tail end of the 70s, which was cool, but the 80s was even worse. I mean, it was a bad time for Corvette. That gives you an example of what we're going to start seeing with the car industry in certain areas. Meaning that when they overspend, you're going to see areas that they're having to compensate in. And some of that is in research and development. Some of that is in new product lines. On the GM front, GM is investing heavily in the V8 engine. This new design for the V8 engine is supposed to be one of their best ones yet. Now, I'm not a fan of their active fuel management. Never have been. Never will be. Because the way that the valve trains are designed, they're designed to fail. Meaning that it's going to be costly for people to do repairs. Because of that, a lot of people have been looking for ways of shutting off the active fuel management. Sometimes you can turn off the overdrive. Sometimes you can turn on traction control or turn off traction control. Sometimes turning off auto start stop helps. Everyone's learning tricks to do to turn off this active fuel management. And yes, your fuel mileage gets worse, but you're prolonging the life of the engine. That's the trade-off. And unfortunately, that's where we're at with this new fuel stuff setup. You're either looking at a 4-cylinder save you fuel, or you're looking at spending the money in a V8 and risking either damaging the engine or having less fuel mileage. Those are the trade-offs. And honestly, if you're using it for pulling and towing like most people do with pickups, you don't necessarily want it going into 4-cylinder mode at that point anyway, because 4-cylinder mode has really bad issues with it. So, guys, that's the news for this week. I want to say thank you guys for all the support. This video has been great. You guys were awesome during the voting. That was fun. We're going to try to do more of that for next week. Again, next week's topic, you guys stuck around, it's going to be on alternators. I'm going to do a removal and an install. So I'm going to take it out and put it in on camera. So I didn't really finish up this alignment on camera because I need to really focus on what I'm doing and I don't want to throw this alignment off. So I'm going to do it off camera, but I showed you guys what to do, how to do it, why the string method isn't all that it's cracked up to be, because yeah, you got to set the caster. Caster has to be first. And if you can set caster, then you can do the rest. Then you can do the toe in, toe out. You can do the steering wheel adjustment. You can do the string method to make sure that the vehicle is tracking straight. The string method only does the vehicle track. Does the vehicle track straight down the road? That's all it does. Nothing else. You don't use that to set your toe in and toe out. All that string does is tell you that the rear is aligned with the front. Tape measures tell you if your toe in and toe out is set. And you're measuring from one side of the vehicle to the other. The best is to measure off of the rims, not off of the tires. Tires do have play in it. The rubber does flex, so you're not going to get an accurate alignment. You could be a 1/4 inch off by measuring the lugs on tires versus using a tool set for the rim. Again, I use quick trick alignment tools. They work great. Check them guys out if you want. I don't have a code because I'm not sponsored by them. I don't really want to be sponsored by anybody. It's just easier if I buy the stuff and do the demos for you guys. But check them out, especially if you do anything racing. They will help you get aligned. I'd like to say thank you guys for all the support. Continue hitting the like, the follow, and the subscribe buttons. Actually, not the follow anymore because we're no longer on other socials. That's right. We're here on YouTube all the time, guys. This is where you guys can find us. So make sure you guys ring that notification bell so you guys get notified when I go live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Central Time. I'll see you guys on the next one.